Hey everyone, welcome back to FPL Fran. Today's video is going to be my GW3 Team Selection, and I will be looking to, of course, spend the two free transfers that I've saved up since I rolled on Game Week 2, and now I have the opportunity to really attack Game Week 3. I think this Game Week is very interesting because you have the opportunity now to attack City fixtures with Sheffield United away, and then a very good Game Week 4, the same with Chelsea, who, for example, have Luton Town at home, and then also a very good Game Week 4. As far as Game Week 3, though, just simply going back to my team, starting with the defenders, I have Pickford as my goalkeeper. The reason why I'm going for Pickford is very simple. It's just Wolves at home. A home fixture is always better for a team. We've always seen that from underlying stats that defenses perform better at home. It's a much better fixture. Wolves versus Man United. Very, very simple. As far as the defense, though, I will be actually playing Estupiñán, Chilwell, and Shaw. And actually, I think it's really worth talking about the benching dilemma because I think there's really five defenders, arguably, that I could be playing this week. I've got Gusto in from James because I really wanted to avoid a price drop from James, and I was uncertain about what I wanted to do with the midfielders at this point in time. So I did take a price drop in one of the midfielders, but instead I've actually gone out of James early. So I went for Gusto, which I sort of discussed on Twitter as well. And the simple reason is because I think when you look at our teams with, let's say, Arsenal defense, United defense, Game Week 4 is, of course, a problem point. We're not really expecting for Arsenal or City to keep a clean sheet. And for that reason, I've actually gone for someone who still has a very good Game Week 4 fixture, which is going to be someone like Malo Gusto. And we know from the recent James injury updates that Malo Gusto will be playing for Game Weeks 3 and 4 more than likely, unless, of course, Pochettino does something crazy that we don't really expect. And James will be coming back from the international break, which means Game Week 5. And so you now have an opportunity, for example, someone to just simply cover that gap. And so at 4.0, I just really like the cost saving there. I'm wanting to move away from that sort of 4-5-1 template that I set up for myself. And with João Pedro actually being ready to play, this was a good opportunity to, for example, start saving up some money in the bank so then I can actually, in the future, make a transfer away from him. In the meantime, though, of course, there is a dilemma with everyone else. I think you just discussing this Chelsea fixture, I think they actually have the best fixture from a clean sheet point of view, but it's very hard to sort of justify going for Gusto over both Shaw and Estupiñán. And the reason is because I think Shaw and Estupiñán are the key sort of fullback attackers in their team. Very much like how Chilwell, who's right now playing in the sort of left wing position, is essential. As far as Shaw, he looked much better in the Tottenham game. I was very worried about how he was interplaying with Mount. And now with the Mount injury, you could arguably say that we probably have a bit more confidence in this United team going forwards because they're simply just going to play the same way they did last season with, for example, Eriksen back in the team. You even have, for example, McTominay as well who can play. But I simply think that they were struggling to sort of find ways to actually create attacking opportunities. You could say that with the expected goal involvement that United have created, that they've actually been a relatively decent attack. But I think that they've also been overwhelmed a lot and also on the counter in the midfield. And so there clearly were some kinks to sort of work out with. And now maybe you have an opportunity for them to sort of reset and play very similar to that they did last season. And ultimately, anyways, this is a Nottingham Forest fixture at home. It's a great opportunity to go for a United defender, someone as good as Shaw as well. As far as Estupiñán, he was great last season, brilliant as well. We also saw him score massively, which I actually missed out completely on when he did incredible things in the double game week versus Arsenal. And in my opinion, I think that he's just unmissable. I think West Ham, of course, are slightly better defense than, let's say, Fulham that Saliba's facing. But you just have to simply say that it's incomparable, Estupiñán's attacking prowess so far. Right now, that left-hand side for Brighton seems like something that many teams can't really figure out. You have players like the Tens who are Enciso and João Pedro who are now moving towards the left-hand side, combining with players like Matoma and Estupiñán, and you can just see the expected goal involvement already within the first two games. It's been brilliant so far, and I just don't think West Ham are a good enough defense to really face up to that, and so Estupiñán is a very simple pick to go for this week. As far as Saliba, though, you also have an option here to play him. He's got a Fulham fixture at home. It's a very nice game, but I also find it very hard to sort of actually play Saliba in this fixture just because the other attacking fullbacks are players that I'd rather sort of prioritize, and Saliba just makes for a very good bench option. You could even argue that Saliba should be put further in the bench because of someone like Gusto, who also has a much better fixture in Luton Town. So it's very hard, and I think I've got a very strong bench for this week, but there's nothing really I can do about it. As far as the midfield, though, I will be playing with Bruno and I will be playing with Rashford. And these two players are players that I will be keeping for this week. I just simply think that United reverting back to the structure that they were very promising in last year will be nice. And Højlund is coming back too. And that should hopefully help Rashford reintegrate himself back into that sort of left wing position, which he, of course, thrives in and probably struggles in with the center forward position instead. As far as Bruno, We have seen, of course, him play deep, even with, let's say, Mount not being in the team. So, of course, some concerns over that will still be there. But I don't think that's really impacted his expected goal involvement. And ultimately, he's still the penalty taker. And United fixtures are actually still pretty good from an attacking point of view. Because even when you look towards the future, I'd say only the Arsenal game is bad. Because even a Brighton team can be attacked upon. They've shown, for example, that they're a very, very good attack, but that they've also been able to leave a lot of opportunities in behind for teams to hit them on the counter. Maybe you can also argue it's a factor of game state as well, because they've let go a lot of opportunities when they're 4-0 up, which is very, very drastically different. But that's sort of the landscape, I would say. As far as Saka, he's an easy keep as well, even though he seemingly has lost penalties. I think that these Arsenal midfielders are fantastic, and maybe we might even be looking at an opportunity to move towards Odegaard in the future. But for the time being, I think Saka still looks brilliant, and there's nothing really to do with him because he's a 90-minute player for this Arsenal team. It's a little bit different, I would say, if you're owning someone like Martinelli, or like myself, if you've been owning Kai Havertz, who's looked very, very dismaying, and of course has not been able to get enough minutes within the 9 position because of Eddie Nketiah and his ability to sort of get into that starting 11. And so for that reason, I've also gone out of Kai Havertz. So I'm keeping it in Mbumo, but of course, I have to move out of Kai, unfortunately. I think that there's an opportunity here to really go with Sterling in Luton Town. I did mention, of course, that I really wanted to go for this Fulham fixture with Kai Havertz, but just revisiting the sort of underlying stats so far, even the lack of shots, yes, of course, he was in some promising positions. Like, for example, if you saw one of Eddie Nketiah's key chances in the previous match, he was actually there, for the cutback effectively. But he just simply has been a little bit dismaying from an FPL asset point of view. And previously we were looking at him with good odds of, for example, him playing in the 9 position, and that simply hasn't come to fruition. You could of course argue that it was quite obvious to say that because the tactical setup versus Man City was very specific, but I also think that there are some truths in terms of Arteta's comments talking about how well Eddie Nketiah trained and how that sort of got him into the side. So I do think I will be parting ways with Kai Havertz, and I'm going for Raheem Sterling as well. It's a cost saving here of 0.4 million, and of course more money in the bank. But the idea, of course, is he does have a better fixture than Kai Havertz, and I've got more certainty over his minutes. Because the thing about Kai Havertz too is, if let's say Gabriel and Zinchenko are coming back into the team, you could even see this Arsenal team maybe revert to, let's say, Partey and Rice and Odegaard in the midfield. So maybe Kai Havertz's minutes are up for debate, and so that's very hard for me to deal with, whether he actually starts, whether he gets benched, maybe whether there's an option for him to get subbed off a little bit earlier than he has in recent games, because he's actually completed 2 full games for this Arsenal team so far. So it's hard to say that he would lose the minutes completely, but of course Trossard is still there waiting in the wings to get his chance as well, and we have seen Trossard in the preseason, that left center mid position. So I think I will be moving towards Raheem Sterling. I'm not 100% certain about this move, but it's more than likely what I think is right in my head. So that's going to be my midfield. And then with my forwards this week, I'm going with João Pedro and Haaland. Unfortunately, we had the very bad news with Enciso suffering an injury. Of course, he's a young talent, and that's not good. But João Pedro will probably benefit from this in terms of the minutes that he'll get for this Brighton team versus West Ham, which I think is still very good just because it's a home fixture. And of course, as I said, he's on penalties. Now, Lallana can, of course, take away minutes from João Pedro, and we also know that someone like Welbeck and Ferguson can be used and utilized, for example, in the 10 position, the 9 positions, respectively, which was actually something that Brighton did a lot. They did Undav for the 10 a couple times last season. Welbeck has been used, for example, as a right winger at times, even as a 10. So yes, of course, these players can take away minutes from João Pedro, but I still think it's good to actually punt on attacker with a good home fixture. And Brighton's attack are very hard to miss out on because they've just looked so good so far. And so that's why I'm actually going with this team here. A 3-5-2, more of the template sort of that we've seen from game weeks 1 and 2. I do think that will change, and a lot of the money in the bank can actually be spent elsewhere in the future, and I'm looking forward to, of course, find some opportunities to maybe upgrade with the attacking positions. The reason why I've not gone for someone like Jackson this week is because of the late news that we actually got with Lukaku maybe being reintegrated into the Chelsea team. I think that sort of takes away a little bit of the allure of Jackson, even though I think Jackson very easily starts this Luton Town game. But if you really want to make immediate transfers, or you're forced to make immediate transfers, and Lukaku's going to get some minutes, I think that does concern Jackson. So that's why I'm actually going for this 3-5-2 team setup. I might be rolling the free transfer in terms of, let's say, keeping Kai Havertz in the team, but right now it does look a little bit gloomy with Kai Havertz in my team. So I am sticking to this lineup for the time being. And then, of course, if we move forward to the future, I think if I roll the free transfer, I might even be looking at Foden, just because I want more information about the City attackers. So if I get to roll, I might actually think about going for Havertz, keeping him for game week 3 versus Fulham, and then actually going for Foden. So do let me know what you guys think about that. Should I attack the fixture with someone like Sterling versus Luton Town, or just wait and look for an opportunity to go for someone like Foden as well? I understand, of course, Foden is someone that I can easily go in for this weekend too, but the reason why I've actually passed up on Foden is because I do think that the fixtures is a little bit better for Sterling. So saving the free transfer sometimes has a lot of value, and in this situation, particularly if, let's say, Silva is coming back into the team, it'll be interesting to see who loses out from the minutes, whether it's Alvarez or whether it's Foden, and whether Grealish, for example, keeps his spot in the team too. So that's what I'm actually going to do. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.